I'm Katie Wells, host of the Maximized Minimalist podcast. I escaped the hamster wheel of modern-day motherhood, overwhelmed by clutter and buried under the mental load. Now I live in a home that feels calm, manageable, and made for real life. I have margin in my days, energy for who matters most, and time for slow mornings and silly dance parties in the kitchen with my family. With over 5 million listens, the show has helped women around the world turn their homes into their happy place. Around here, we simplify for more peace, more presence, and more joy. We choose grace over guilt and progress over perfection. And we believe your home should give back more than it takes. I'm here to help you do the same. Come along with me and my guests as we share the real stories, habits, and strategies that help you lighten the load from the inside out. Pull up a seat, friend, and let's do this together. Ready, set, simplify. What's up, Simplifiers? Today's guest is someone I've been so excited to talk to, McNamee, who I've been following on Instagram for years. Maybe you have too. Go check her out. She is one half of the account called Feeding Littles, and they have a community of over 1.9 million followers on Instagram. And that is because they share simple, shame-free, stress-free nutrition advice for families, which is exactly what we are diving into today. Megan, I've got her newest book, Feeding Littles Lunches. And my kids, even though they're not so little anymore, they're 8 and 10, they are obsessed with this cookbook. They're finding recipes to cook from it and requesting me to make. So it's just been so awesome. And I can't wait to have her on. Let's get into it. All right, Megan, I am so stinking excited to dive right into questions and just start to get those gold nuggets out of your brain and into our listeners' brains and mine too. So excited to have you to the show. Welcome, welcome.
Thank you. It's awesome to be here.
So I always start off with my guest episodes with the traditional question we have here on the Maximized Minimalist. And that is, if you could magically declutter one thing from your life forever, no effort required, what would you let go of?
Can I say my husband's spaces?
Yes, you absolutely can.
I love your podcast and I get so many nuggets from it, but because I am a major declutterer, major organizer, I have a lot of anxiety about mess and organization. So it really helps me to have a very tidy space, and it's taken me a while to figure out those systems, but I don't go into my husband's spaces and they give me so much anxiety when I see them. And I'm like, not my problem, not my problem. And I'm like, how can you live with your drawer? It's under his sink in the bathroom. And then it's his side of the bed. I'm not going to touch, I'm not going to go into his stuff, but it drives me crazy because even if we organize it together, then it's back to chaos in a week. So that's what I would do. I wish I could change that, but
I love this and I love your stance on it. So it sounds like you've done the organization with them. You know what's going to happen. And I think you are 100% spot on in the sense you just have to be this isn't my space and I'm going to honor this isn't important to him. And it makes me cringe every time I see it. But to him, he doesn't notice it and just be like, hey, that's not my spot. So how do you two manage, if I can ask, how do you two manage shared spaces? So it sounds like you have different kind of expectations around that or, preferences. So how does that work with a kitchen or a living room?
He's pretty respectful actually of the shared spaces. He totally follows the systems.
So what's the system? Is it nothing can land here or put your keys over here?
If there's a spot for it, we try to keep it in the spot. That's all it is. I've even had an organizer that I've paid to come over and help us kind of create the system before kind of thing. I call it that. I've never even spoken of it like that before, but all it is I try to have, if there's a drawer, I try to have little containers and places for things in it so things aren't just rolling around. We try to have a little bit of organization to the chaos. He's self-employed as well. And we have 2 kids that are competitive volleyball players. And we just have our life kind of chaotic. And so we have to have organization at home or our home has to feel peaceful. And we renovated a house a few years ago and had to move to 2 rentals in between because one of them flooded. So we had some major clean out that we were able to do in all of that. And we kind of realized we both feel better having our space decluttered. But I still do it probably every 6 months. I go through my closet, my bathroom, the kids' rooms with them, the playroom. It takes some time, but it's to me worth it for the peace that it brings me the rest of the days that I'm not decluttering.
I love that. Didn't realize you were such a simplifier. This makes me
Oh, yeah.
even more excited. And
Big
you listen to
time.
the show. Yeah. Okay, good. This
Yep.
is so good. All right. So obviously your expertise is in, I mean, your nutritionist and intuitive eater expert. I mean, let's start there if we can, because I feel like, I mean, to me, at least that term is a newer term in the last like decade or so. So could you speak more to that and how that
Yeah,
integrates into like a family setting and feeding our
sure.
families and feeding ourselves?
So intuitive eating is really just getting back to listening to what our body's telling us. And I learned about it. I was already a dietitian when I went into graduate school, and I happened to be able to study under the people that wrote the book Intuitive Eating and become very close with them. And because I lived out in Los Angeles, and that's where this whole movement kind of started. And it's essentially kind of listening inward, like retuning inward, and kind of pushing out all of the kind of rules about food and diet culture that we've learned all around us. And I was so passionate about it for a really long time, and I, applying it to myself, applying it to my clients. And then when I had a baby and I started teaching solid foods and baby-led weaning, this was literally 12 years ago, was one of the first people in the US to do this. Everyone thought it was crazy to talk about baby-led weaning. I didn't make the connection right away that really what we were teaching was intuitive eating for babies, like intuitive eating right from the start. It's helping parents trust their kids know how much to eat and what feels good on their bodies and giving them the space to explore. So it's definitely a term that a lot of people are not familiar with. And I think in the last year or two, the diet culture rhetoric has like really doubled down, like really big time online. I see it even more. But I think a lot of parents gravitate toward the idea of like, I'm providing the food, they're deciding how much to eat. We're not demonizing foods in our home. We're not forcing them to eat certain, finish your plate to get dessert. We're trying not to put foods on a pedestal. And, if you walked into my pantry right now, you would see all kinds of foods. And because my kids have access to them, and because they're not something that are, off limits, they don't go crazy for them. They don't, their friends might come over and be like, oh my gosh, I can't believe you have, whatever this chocolate or whatever this is, and you can just eat it if you want. But it's not something that's super special to them because they see it. And of course they get a lot of, fruits and vegetables and all those other foods as well. But we have room for fun foods at our home, because I believe that if we restrict them heavily, our kids will see them as off limits, and we always like what we can't have, right? So it's kind of a balance. To me, healthy eating includes eating the foods that are good for our soul.
Yeah.
And that makes us feel more fulfilled.
I love that. And I love approaching it, not just for ourselves, but, obviously saw how well it works for you and, the babies, in a sense that you were teaching the families with the babies. That's really interesting, into the baby-led weaning. And I totally agree. And it's interesting because my oldest is 10 and youngest is 8. And my husband, I think for first kids, this isn't unusual from what I hear. Like I was super, like when he started eating, I was like, only organic strawberries because this, that, and the other.
Yep.
No sugar, no processed grains. And now I'm like, eat whatever you want.
Yeah.
And interestingly enough, my oldest one, who we restricted a lot with like processed sugars in the beginning, is the one who craves it massively. Where my youngest one, where I was like, all right, stuff is in the house. Kind of your approach is, like I just relaxed about it because it was so stressful. He's the one that his favorite food, you'll ask him, Levi, what's your favorite food? Salad, avocados. And River's favorite food is like sugar, and maybe that would have happened anyway, but I can't help but wonder, like, did I maybe accidentally do this?
Well, yeah, I think there's definitely some individual variation too, based on like taste preferences. Like I'm a salty, sour, like bitter. I love the like savory flavors, and my husband is more sweet, and we have one kid of each.
Oh, interesting.
Yep. And it's just funny because it's actually harder. My daughter that doesn't like the sweet is actually harder because she doesn't love fruit. And that's hard for me as well. Like we have to kind of gear myself up to actively eat more fruit. I could eat vegetables all day long. But I think, there's absolutely some individual variation. And we do have some pretty strong evidence that when we have a really tight control around how we feed our kids, we actually cause the opposite intended effect. So the more authoritarian we are about how we approach food with them, the more they kind of fight back, and they won't eat what we want. They'll sneak food. They'll kind of binge food in secrecy, like that kind of thing. So I like how you use the word relaxed, because I feel like you can be conscientious about nutrition and want your kids to eat well and still be relaxed about it with them. because it's more important, their relationship with food, than the actual foods they eat. We're talking long term, right? Making them eat the broccoli today, like making them hate the broccoli long term, is not beneficial, right? Demonizing sugar right now versus like them binging on it because they feel like they couldn't have access to it. Again, not beneficial long term. I know parents like kind of zero in on like, for this meal, they didn't eat this, or this day, they didn't eat this, but we kind of want to look broad, like what's going on over the course of a week, the course of the month. Do your meal times feel relaxed? Do they feel positive? Obviously, they're not going to be like this la la land, joyous, candlelight, everything's perfect kind of thing. There's chaos. There's, kids getting up from the table. There's probably balls that are flying around, especially if your kids are interested in certain sports. That's normal, but is it positive? Like, does it feel like something that everyone's looking forward to come to? Then that's the goal we're working toward. And when our kids can see food in that light, they're more willing to try new things. They're more willing to model eating vegetables because we're eating vegetables. It doesn't feel like a battleground.
Yeah. That's interesting. And I love your opinion on this. It's got me thinking. Right around the same time I started to relax around, that, I was like, let's try like a good, better, best. And kind of just, as my kids are getting older, objectively teach them like how to read labels and talk about like, hey, this might not be the best, but it's good enough for today. We're in a hurry. We're off to baseball or whatever sport, Is that something you incorporate, or you like, what do you think about that concept when it comes to not necessarily, it could be feeding like this food is good enough for today, but just teaching the kids about like recipes and ingredients and what they're fueling their body with down the road as they start to, one day leave the house and everything.
Yeah, I think it's really important for kids to learn how foods make their bodies feel and perform. And the best teacher of that sometimes is natural consequence.
Yes.
And that's an interesting, like if your kids ever had a really bad stomach ache from eating too much Halloween candy, or they went to a practice, it's actually very easy to do this with athletes. If you have athletes at home, it's very easy because they find out real quick, like, oh, I just had a handful of like, M&Ms, and then I played a 3-hour tournament and I thought I was going to pass out, or I ate something really heavy before. My daughter plays volleyball as a libero. So she's on the floor a lot. She's the one in the back, like going for the first, when bumps at spike, she's the bump. So she has to dive onto her stomach, and she's had to learn these foods feel good when I'm diving. These foods do not. And so it's very easy for her, when we're making decisions about eating before and during tournaments, like I can't eat that. That's going to feel horrible in an hour. I've never heard the terminology good, better, best. I like that so much better than, bad, good, healthy, unhealthy kind of thing. I think it's just nuance and what works best for you and your family, and if that feels good to you. I just caution parents against like saying, well, this is bad for you, this is unhealthy, and really making one like, this like duality. I kind of like the idea though, like I think good, better, best is way more positive language in that way, because nothing's bad in that regard, right? And we in my house, like, we'll sometimes say, now that my kids are older, this is something I would not apply to little kids because they don't understand nuance. But now that my kids are older, I'll say, if they're picking something out, I'll say, let's choose something with a little bit more protein so it has more staying power in our bodies.
Staying power. I love that.
Yeah. Like it'll be more satisfying. We're not going to be hungry in 5 seconds. You have a 2-hour practice. If you just eat crackers, that's not going to give you enough energy long term. So we try to connect it back to what can this do for my body and how do I feel? We'll say things like, I'll say, we really haven't had any vegetables today. Like, what are some vegetables that would taste good with this snack? Or how can we add some fruit to this? I have these 5 options. Like, what sounds good to you? So it's not, you're still as a parent getting to choose what's served, but giving them choices within that, like things that are comfortable to you, and allow them to round out a more balanced meal or snack. So like the protein thing comes up a lot. I think protein is a little overstated on social media. I've always been a big fan of protein in, making sure we're eating protein at each meal and snack. I've always used the term go pro, like protein and produce. If you can remember those 2 things in a meal, you're kind of rounding out your meal more nutritively. Obviously you would add carbohydrate and fat and that kind of thing, but like we miss with kids oftentimes like the protein and the produce. So sometimes we'll say, so anyway, I love protein. I don't think it's the only nutrient that matters. But sometimes we'll say for a snack, there's no protein in this. tell me some protein sources that would go well with these pretzels. And so that way my kids have kind of learned, they figured out like what has protein in it and what would actually taste good. But from that, even if they grab the cheese, I don't make them eat it. So that's kind of the distinction. Like, again, still guiding them towards what's served, but they choose what to eat from what is served.
I love that. I guess I never considered going down the route of like finish your plate, maybe because I found people like you early on. And again, not shaming anyone who has like finish your broccoli before you can have dessert or whatever. But it's interesting the language, that it's just these small tweaks in language and giving them some autonomy. And you could start doing that. When they're 2, hey, here's 5 vegetables. Which one do you want to try first? Or which one would taste good with a cracker? Which dip, hummus? So I love that. And I think that's, again, for kids, it's so empowering versus feeling disempowered or stressed around the dinner table. Of course, that's going to impact them eating or not and how it goes in their relationship with their broader relationship with food, considering that, zooming out and taking that 30,000 foot view, I'm sure sounds different for maybe some listeners who haven't heard that perspective, but I think it sounds awesome and really, really wise.
Well, one thing that we teach, actually, like even in we have a course for toddlers and kids. And like the first thing we do is kind of have the parent sit there and close their eyes and imagine what they want the mealtime to look and feel like in 10 years. Like imagine your kids are 10 years older now. And I'm now actually living that like with kids. And you are too a little bit. And it actually gives me the chills because mealtime now is like sacred for us. And we don't get to do it all 4 of us every single night anymore. And when we do, it's like we turn the TV off, no phones at the table. We actually turn music on and my kids, ask Alexa, I want to get her going. They ask her they ask her to play and we take turns. We do like a high and low of the day. And it's something that all of us really look forward to. And to me, that connection is so much more important than what's on the plate. Now, I still, when I make dinner, I choose what's served, but like, do you want, barbecue sauce with your chicken or do you want ketchup or no sauce? Like there's still choices within that and that give them autonomy and they get to choose, what to eat from that. But it does eventually become this positive thing, like, especially when they get over the hump of picky eating, like when they're younger. I don't know if you're getting into this now, but usually by like ages 6 to 8, kids kind of start to want to try new things a lot more. They're starting to get motivated by hormone drives. They're hungry a lot.
Oh, yeah.
So it's like amazing. You can like make a new meal and they actually want to eat it and love it. And they'll go for seconds. And you're like, whoa, this is awesome. Like it eventually does happen. And then they're like, they start to appreciate, the work that you're putting in towards making food. And it just feels a lot less thankless than it does when they're little. But if you can imagine what you want it to feel like and that you're working toward that goal every time you eat together, even if it feels like it was a flop, even if they had a snack, like a huge snack right before dinner, and then they don't touch their food, that feels demoralizing. But again, if you're like, my goal is a positive relationship with food, a positive experience at the table. And if you can just do those things, you are going to get there eventually.
So I was sharing before we hit record that we recently got your book, one of your newest books, Feeding Little's Lunches. And by the way, it's so adorable. And I was telling Megan, oh my gosh, I have your book. I love it. And it arrived when we were on our trip. And so when I unpacked it, I think the boys were right next to me and they're 8 and 10, and they thought it was for them.
Yep.
And they're like, thanks, Mom. And I was kind of thinking it's for me, and I was like, you're welcome. And so I showed her, it's all, we got our little spots in here. I am obsessed with it. It's visually beautiful, but the recipes in here and strategies. And I had to laugh when the first thing they marked is pizza bagels, your recipe. So this one, because I grew up in the 90s when was the company called Pizza Bagels? No, it was, I remember the commercial, pizza in the morning, pizza in the evening.
I don't know.
Pizza. Do you remember that? Okay.
Yes, so I do. Well, those are commercial. So there's no recipes in this book. I don't know how much you've gotten to like dig through it.
Yeah.
So those are pre-made pizza bagels. Like Annie's makes some. There's a lot of different.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
Yeah. So our first book that came out a few years ago was called Feeding Littles and Beyond, and it is a cookbook. But when we wrote this, I was like, we are not putting a single recipe in this book because nobody wants to make recipes for lunch. If they're packing school lunch, They don't want to make a
Yeah, no,
recipe.
that's a good point. I've
And if
noticed that. Yeah.
and if they do, there are recipes everywhere. We have a cookbook. There are things from the
Yeah.
cookbook that can go in. There's recipes all over the internet. If you want to make a homemade pizza bagel, by all means, you can make a homemade pizza bagel. But the kind of joy of this book to me is giving parents permission to do something easy and to take foods that they have easily accessible and turn them into a little bit of variety and a little bit of, balance for their kids' lunches. And it's been kind of cool because it's funny to see what kids gravitate toward and what they want. And it's opened up even my kids' eyes. Like they'll look through the book and be like, why don't you ever make this? This is in your book. Why don't you give us this? So yeah, it's a non-recipe cookbook. It's an idea, like an inspo book. And it's done really well. People have really loved it. And we're really proud of it because it, I think, takes off a lot of that mental load.
Yes. And so let's talk about that mental load and like the decision fatigue that, it's like, what's for lunch? What's for dinner? I know it's called Feeding Little's Lunches, but all of these things I'm seeing in here now that I've stolen it back from River and Levi, I mean, like you said, they're simple ingredients you can chop up. And I mean, it's a meal, which we so appreciate. So obviously the simplicity speaks to eliminating so much of that decision fatigue. But yeah, talk more about that. Was that a big inspiration, with so many of us being, so busy and overwhelmed in our modern day age that it was like you said, we don't need another 18-page recipe. We just need what do I put in the lunch? What do I put in the meal?
Yes. The idea for the book came from, I kept posting my kids' lunches on Instagram stories. And I've done it for years, like a decade.
Yeah.
And people are like, oh, that's all. It doesn't need to be that hard. And I'm like, no, why are you guys overcomplicating this? This is so I'll speak more to the simplicity and mental load, but what I want to share, which I think helps lower that mental load, is we go by a formula. So it's a carbohydrate, a protein, a fruit, a vegetable, and a dessert, a chip, a dip, something fun in there. You can do all three. You can do none if you don't want to. But the idea is if you have in your head, like kind of running, is there a carbohydrate source? Is there a protein, a fruit, a vegetable, and something fun? Then you've made a complete lunch, and it doesn't have to be a sandwich. And everyone thinks, and my kids are not really sandwich kids. Like that's one of the reasons I love this book, because there's not tons of sandwiches. It's not all sandwiches. I think what really helps too is that people wanted not only a kind of a formula in their head or kind of some structure around it, but they also wanted the visual, because this is something that kids are using even more so than their parents. And it's just funny that you said that about your own sons. This is what's happening. These books, people will bring these books home for their own use, and their kids will kidnap it. We have pictures of people, their kids are sleeping with it in bed, reading it for their 20 minutes of reading at night. And I love that so much because we were really careful of the language we use in it, making sure not to call kids picky eaters and to be kind of, thoughtful about that. But I think that if you have a lot of ideas in one spot that are visual, that your kids can flip through, and that you can help, you guys together can make lists, that now lowers decision fatigue because you're not trying to guess what they want to have for lunch. You are adding variety naturally without it being this stressful process, because you're like, oh, I have a list. I know the things that they want to try, and they're more willing to eat it because they've picked it out and they were part of the decision-making process. And it's actually been immensely helpful for parents of really picky eaters, because the visual allows them to become more comfortable with the food. So there's been some really interesting aha moments since it's come out of ways that people are using it even more than we expected. But it's fun to have a tool that is so tangibly helpful that people literally pick up and can start using right away.
Wow. So I'm thinking of the listener who might have a kiddo who's only white foods, only mac and cheese and chicken.
Yep.
Okay. So they go and get this Feeding Little's Lunches book, and they're so inspired. Maybe they're, with their kiddo, showing them pictures, but their kiddo's feeling a little bit resistant, or where do we start the conversation?
Yeah.
Obviously, I mean, they could be 2, they could be 12 and still have those same preferences.
Right. And so I love that you say it. We call them beige foods. I love white foods. Are all the idea that, they only exist on crackers and noodles and that kind of thing. And that's very common. And you didn't mess up first and foremost. If you're there, you didn't do something wrong. This is really normal. Most people like the taste of those foods. Like they're predictable, they're safe, they taste the same every time. That's why your kid freaks out if you get a different brand because they're comfortable with the brand you always buy, right? So baby steps can be really helpful, but kids learn to expect variety when they start to see variety. And especially if they're eating at school where you're not, hopefully nobody's hovering over them and making them eat lunch. Even if they're just seeing that food in their lunchbox, even if it's just one piece, it's getting them comfortable with seeing variety over and over again and expecting that it's going to be there every time they open their lunchbox. So we tell families like start small. If you serve, there's actually literally a picture, a visual of this at the front of the book. But essentially, if you're serving something like bagel and cream cheese and blueberries and chocolate at every lunch, and you want to start adding some variety, well, you can slowly do that by maybe a different brand of bagel that's still, a white bagel that tastes maybe just nominally different. Maybe you cut the bagel in a different way. Literally, this is, if you're able to see the visual,
Yeah.
maybe you swap out the strawberries for a different, preferred fruit, but it's not strawberries. Maybe you're adding a different dessert to it. Maybe you put it in a different container. So we're talking like baby steps and things that don't seem to be very helpful. Parents are like, well, what's that going to do? But again, we're getting kids that are very cautious and who struggle with change, more comfortable with change. And we're all like this too. Like if you want to run a marathon and you literally do not exercise, you're not going to stand up and go run 13 miles. Like you are going to hopefully stand up and walk out of the house, maybe around the block and come back. That's the first step. It's not going from 0 to 60. It's starting really small. And that's, I know, Katie, something that you talk about all the time on your podcast. Like, I'm not going to clean out my entire house. I need to start with something manageable because here's the thing. I don't have time to clean out my entire house. And so I'll just never do it. If I want to take that first step, I have to take a small step. And that works really, really well. It's a concept called food chaining and feeding therapy, but it works really well with kids where you kind of but you offer them foods that are similar enough to foods that they're comfortable with so that the change isn't too overwhelming.
So I know we're recording this in the summer, but I'm thinking ahead to like school time and all of the well-intentioned parents. And I certainly did this too, where I didn't do the baby steps. I was just like, I packed their little bento boxes with all the things. I was just like, maybe they'll eat it. And then they would come home, 90% of it would still be there. It'd be nasty. And then I'm like wasting food. I'm getting frustrated. Right. So it sounds like I certainly could have used those tips, but
I mean, I do that too. I oftentimes just pack totally different foods and you never know. Right.
Yeah.
Well, I just want to speak to that. I know you didn't really ask a question, but like, it is so normal for kids not to eat lunch. Let me just tell you that right now. Like my kids do it. Every kid I know does it. There are times that no matter what you pack, even if you pack the most beautiful or delicious to them lunch, all the things that they want, they're not going to eat it because the social experience of the lunchroom is so big. And you have no idea if they're, they want to talk to their friend that's in a new class now, especially as they get older and you're starting to see this with your boys, I'm sure. Like now they're not with their friends all the time. They're not in preschool anymore where they're just like in the same class. Once they start rotating classes and stuff, they want to see their people. And we remember this in, elementary and junior high. Like we were so focused on our friends. And then it's like, oh, shoot, the bell just rang and lunchtime is over and I didn't eat anything. So I'm shoving food in my mouth. Lunchtimes are notoriously very short. Although I will say, at least at our school, I've been there for lunch and I'm like, you guys have time to eat. You're just not using it very efficiently. But that is like what it is to be a kid. You're not focused on the food. You have other priorities. Maybe you want to get out to the play yard for recess. Maybe that's what your priority is right now. So I just want to normalize that for parents. Like it is completely 100% normal. We have an entire page about that in the book. Like very normal for them not to eat their food no matter what you packed. So I don't want you to feel like you're messing it up or doing it wrong because all of us experience it. Now, as they get older, it's great to talk to them. Hey, what happened? Did you know, I do it really gently, like, what's up? You didn't really eat your lunch. The majority of the time they'll say, oh, we just didn't have time. I didn't have time. But sometimes they'll say, oh, I don't really like that right now. I'm not really into that right now. I'll say, okay, well, that's fine. Let's tweak it a little bit. Like, is there a different bread we can put it on or a different way we can serve that? Again, my kids go in and out of liking sandwiches. So it's like, let's do chicken salad with crackers or pretzels or something. So it's not in a sandwich form. And sometimes that helps, but what you've done is what everyone does. You send a lunch, you pray for the best. And even despite really delicious food, it oftentimes comes back uneaten, which is frustrating.
I think it's refreshing though for me, and I'm sure a lot of my listeners, to hear your perspective on that it's so normal, and that it doesn't mean like your kids like not going to grow, like get tall and strong and like all these things we kind of these worries we have, but I think you're right, especially, in the school year, once that kicks back in, the social aspect. I think my kids have 20 minutes for lunch, and they're at an age where they're like, they want to pal around, and then food is an afterthought for sure.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And then you pick them up and they're ravenous.
Yes. Starving. They want to have 2 dinners.
Right.
Yeah.
And so something that can help, I never want to so one thing I'm always cautious about is recommending, like, if they don't eat something, to serve it again and again until they eat it. Cause I feel like that feels kind of punitive, but sometimes it can work with lunch if they just didn't have time or they were distracted. And as long as the lunch has stayed cold and it's still safe to eat, sometimes literally on the way home, my kids will open up their lunch and like scarf it in the car. Cause they're like, oh, I forgot to do this. And now I'm starving. And we recommend at least 2 ice sources in a lunch. That will help guarantee that it stays cold and in an insulated bag. That can really help. Or using something like the Packet Cool bags that are built-in ice pack bags. Those stay cold a really, really long time. And then less waste because you can actually eat some of the food at the end of the day.
Oh, I needed you back then, but I'm still going to use these tips. Okay. So now that I'm thinking, okay, so we're not calling, what do we call it? They're not recipes. I'm flipping through your book and I'm looking and it's making me hungry.
I know.
Lunchbox and okay, veggie tots. I want that. Sub sandwich. There's your one sandwich, the sub sandwich.
There's a few stuck in there. I think there's 75 ideas, and I should count. There's probably like 4 sandwiches. I don't know. There's not that many, but I know that not every kid is into them. I do want to speak to, if it's okay, Katie, like something that I find that might be really appropriate for your audience. One thing that really helped me when I was packing lunches every day. My kids have needed lunches packed for them since they were 2. So I've been doing this a really long time. Yes, there's school lunch available. My kids used to love it when they were little and now they hate it. And I don't know if the social aspect is part of that or whatever, but like I do make them get school lunch at least once a week to help me with my own mental load. But they're like, please mom, pack or let us pack together, because they just like bringing their lunch. One thing that is monumentally helpful to us is packing the night before.
Yes.
Packing the night before. And people get really worried that it's going to get gross or, soggy or stinky or whatever. If you're using a container that you'll see in the book where the compartments are separated, obviously we don't want kids' food all separated all the time on plates. So like they want their food to be able to touch. But when it comes to packing a lunch, you don't want the strawberries and the cucumbers rolling around together. That's going to taste gross, right? You want them separated. You want them sealed. So it's as if you're putting everything in a separate little container in your fridge. And there's some exceptions, certain foods that maybe if you use like a really like thin bread and it was a really soggy kind of like sandwich filling, or there's a lot of vegetables in the sandwich, it might get soggy. But even then you can put a layer of like a spread, like mayonnaise on either side of the bread to help with that. But for the most part, I have tested my kids' food so many times, like the morning of, or even at lunch, and they're still great. And I talk to them all the time about it. And they're like, no, it tastes it's fine. Like it never gets soggy, it never gets gross because it's sealed. So if you're using a lunchbox, there's so many brands now, but if you're using something with separate containers, you can successfully pack, or separate compartments, I should say, you can pack a lunch the night before and pack it literally as you unload it and then pack it at the same time, or you clean out their lunchbox as you're doing, prep for dinner. So you're not making the kitchen dirty 5 times. You're literally doing it all at the same time. Maybe you're chopping up some bell pepper for dinner, throw it in their lunch. You don't have to have all these separate times where you're in the kitchen. If you break it down to just one big, messing up the kitchen and then cleaning up the kitchen, you're going to resent it a lot less.
This is so true. I don't know where I learned that. I started doing that years ago when especially when the kids were in like daycare, very little, had to send them with food, and it saved me. Like you said, the batch work of it. And I wouldn't have to plan And really, I did a lot of these things in here. So
Yeah.
that's
A
good.
lot
But
of it's
like,
very it's very simple. It's very obvious.
yeah, it's just convenient. You're already in the
Yep,
kitchen. So
yep,
throwing in a little that's from dinner, I did that
yeah.
every night and it made such a big difference. And then it became so automatic. I was like, gosh, this is like, it saves so much time.
So much time. And the idea in the morning for me of like the chaos that already ensues, we have a very early start to school. We have to leave by 7:25. And so we don't have a lot of time. And I'm usually like working out until about 7 o'clock. So it's like very short. If I had to pack a lunch during then, I would never do it.
I so agree. That's like one thing I'm hard, fast rules. Like they're in summer camp right now and they had
Mhm.
to, I said, we do it the night before because the morning
Yeah.
of, we don't want to tee ourselves up with
Yeah.
that chaos. It's already busy enough. So summertime related. So I'm thinking of the parents out there who maybe have their kids home all summer.
Yes.
Obviously this is, would you call this like a bento box? Is this what we're calling
Yeah.
it? Is there a new name?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Like a bento
So
box.
so they could still prep that,
Oh, yeah.
for the next day, even though your kid doesn't have to be going to a camp or to school to like do these strategies that you talk about. So
Oh,
the,
yeah.
kind of the first part of your book was a lot of strategies, formulas and things
Right.
to follow, systems, which I loved. And then the last half was all the like the go-to
Right.
things.
Yeah. Yes.
So
Yeah. So the format of the book is structured where like the beginning has lists and ideas, and we talk more about like the theory and things. It's stuff to read in little short blocks, so it's not too dense, right? Because we know people need information quickly. But and then the rest of the book is just the ideas, and every single idea has an allergy modification for the top 9 allergens, toddler tips for how to make it safe for kids that are younger to eat or easier for those kids too. We have picky eater tips or picky eating tips. We don't use picky eater. We have and I say that because sometimes when we label our kids as such, they kind of live up to that label, right?
yes,
So we also have like ways to make it even easier. Like if there's a hard boiled egg feature there, you could buy hard boiled eggs already done. You don't have to make them if you don't want to.
I love that. I noticed that right away on my quick flip through before it was stolen. I loved that. It was like, hey, you can do it or you can just buy them. And I was like, oh, I'll just buy them. It's just, we need to hear that. Like it doesn't have to be as hard as we think it does.
Yeah. And there's also a QR code in here that I think can be really helpful. It has, a lot of people are always asking about what's the product? What's the product here? And so in every single lunch, we have the product written so that you know what it is if you like that lunchbox and you want to go find it. But then in the QR code, we have all of them as like with discounts and such. And then we have not only like an allergy kind of guidebook for parents of kids with allergies and different products that are kind of beyond what we could fit in this book, because that's a very specific really intense amount of information there of like, what are the substitutions for all these different things? So there's the allergy kit that's in there, but we also have this really cool thing where it's essentially the Lunchbox formula in printable form and a fillable form that you can print out and your kids can fill it out for themselves. And we have it designed in like 8 different designs for kids, whatever they might be interested in. And what I like about that is like for your kids that are maybe at home for lunch, even if they're not packing it in advance, maybe it's lunchtime and you're on a call and you're like, okay, let's put together a lunch. If they've gone through the book and they've listed the 5 different fruits and 4 different vegetables and whatever that they are interested in, they can go through those lists and put together their own lunch based on kind of just a little bit of structure. And interestingly, like when kids do that and have that autonomy, they're more likely to eat it and they kind of buy into it because they're like, oh, this is what we do. We create a lunch with these things and that's normal. And then they find things that they like within that formula. And it's just funny, like when I see it all the time now with, my kids' friends who use the book, like they know they're always packing a vegetable. They're always packing a fruit. They're always packing with something with protein in it. And I don't know if they would be as interested if they hadn't made those decisions or been part of that, right? But because they kind of get to have a say, then they eat it more often. And that's one of the things that's so cool about the tools of the book is that it allows for more autonomy. And I think that naturally teaches kids about how to eat without us saying vegetables and fruits are good for you. We just know, like when we make lunch, we add a vegetable and a fruit, and hopefully it's something that you enjoy and you learn to feel good eating over time.
I love that. I love the mindset behind it, the heart behind it. And also it's it is supporting our kids nutritionally. And
Yep.
I think it just helps them find their way there
Yeah.
versus us trying to push and pull and threaten and bribe. And again, I think we've all done those things, but it's exhausting for both parties. And usually it doesn't
Yeah.
get us to the end goal of what we're trying to do through that anyway.
Right. And that's what our parents did with us because that's what their
Yeah.
parents did with them. And we don't know,
Yeah.
nobody knows any better. Right. And any different. And it's, when you're in the thick of picky eating, it's so frustrating because it can feel like a
Yeah.
personal attack. Like they're disrespecting that they're not respecting the work I had to put in to pay for the food that I went and bought and all the work that I did to make the food. It's like, we get in our head about it. Like, this feels like a personal attack. And it's not. It's usually them. They're struggling for, maybe it's a sensory thing. Maybe it's like how it feels, like how they're chewing it in their mouth. Maybe it reminds them of something that was really weird. My daughter recently had the stomach bug. And so now she doesn't want to eat a certain kind of thing from Starbucks that we would always get on vacation, like an egg bite, because she got sick after she ate it. Well, that's very normal for humans to have that association. And sometimes we'll give another adult that grace, but we won't give it to our kids. And, it's realizing that they have their own preferences. They have their own palates. It's okay for them to not like everything. Our job is to continue to offer that variety of food when we can and offer the foods that our families enjoy, considering their preferences, but not catering towards just a few things that they will, that they want. Like, you don't have to live in mac and cheese jail if you don't want to. You can still serve a variety of foods, and maybe you always make sure you have bread or fruit or something on the table that they're comfortable with. The goal is for them, again, to have this like kind of positive association with eating and food so that they have the space to try new things. They know that they can spit it out if they hate it. And eventually they build up that confidence over time, like, oh no, I do like eating all of these different things. And it is a positive experience for me. And I do want to try a variety of foods. It's not a like, do one thing and that fixes it now. It's a longer process.
Yeah, you're zooming out your perspective. And I agree that I think we live in a time and age, especially social media use, where it's like, what's the checklist I need? What's the one hack? And it's like, the hack is like, it's a relationship with your kid. And this is long term, and it's their relationship with food. And so I think we become so desperate. We're looking for the one thing or the one PDF. And I think it's really refreshing. And also maybe not so refreshing. It's just the reality. It's like, okay, just take a breath, take a breath.
I will eat. You're about to head into this because it's especially noticeable with boys, but girls as well. Eventually they will not stop eating. Like eventually they will eat you out of house and home. They will literally be completely insatiable.
So what are the tips for those already in that phase or me heading into it on how to keep your grocery bill low? Is it possible?
I don't know. Get a Costco.
Costco, yeah.
My brother-in-law is one of 4 boys, and they would in the 90s spend $600 a week when they were in high school at Costco only, not including their other expenses. And that was in the 90s. And we're talking, they're all football players and whatever, but like it was a lot of food, a lot of milk, a lot of just volume of things. And I think for people in that phase, I think it just becomes kind of ironic and funny because you look back at the time they didn't eat and you're like, how come we didn't balance this out a little bit better?
Yeah, I couldn't get you to eat when you're little. Now you're eating me and I have nobody left. So
I have no food. I open up the fridge and it's all gone. And like, it's just kind of ironic at that point.
Yeah, those full circle moments, even if I don't love how that moment ends, it's so funny to just be able to chuckle and be like, well.
Yeah. I know. And I even see it now with my girls, like their friends are starting to kind of get into that social pressure. That's what ends up happening. Like with a lot of times with picky eating, kids want to be like their peers and please their peers and be able to go out and eat different foods. And so it's funny, like kids that never would have tried sushi or oysters or things like that before, if they see their peers eating them, they get more interested. And, you lament about your kid not eating XYZ when they're younger, but they usually eventually get there. Like they'll eat it eventually. And if we create this like environment of pressure and like we're staring them down as they eat and we're making them feel uncomfortable, like they're less likely to get there, right? If we kind of remember that our job is to provide the food. Our job is to provide the food. It's not to make them eat it. It feels so freeing for us. And obviously there's a little nuance there depending on if kids are dealing with, feeding issues. But like for the most part, kids can grow really well when we give them a little bit of space to make choices about what they do and do not want to eat based on what we serve them.
Yeah. And even looking back, I can't help but think of high school. I mean, I was that kid who would have a Little Debbie and a milk
Yeah.
most of my high school, 4 years. That was my lunch. And for breakfast, I'd have Cocoa Pebbles. When I got home from school before track, I'd have Cocoa Pebbles really
Yeah.
quickly. Like you said, once I entered into my sports era, I was like, oh, maybe I should have an apple, but I never felt any pressure. My parents weren't like questioning me. And looking back, I can see how ultimately that helped me get to where I ended up in my earlier 20s going, hey, you know what? Maybe I should, because of stomach issues in my early 20s, because all I ate was carbs and sugar. I was like, maybe I should change the way I eat. Imagine that. I felt immediately better. Right. But getting there kind of on my own, in a sense, without additional pressure.
Right.
And had they stood up and maybe made some recommendations, I probably would have said no, because I was a teenager. I didn't want to listen to them. Parents are not right. We want to rebel. At least I did. So.
Oh yeah. Oh no. I think I had in middle school, it was three like freshly baked, amazing chocolate chip cookies for $1 in our cafeteria. That's what they served for like snack in the morning. So you could buy for $1 3 amazing, like big chocolate chip cookies. I had 3 big chocolate chip cookies every single day in middle school, like every single day. And that's, I think some parents kind of forget, like they worry about their kids eating XYZ. I'm pretty sure kids eat a lot better than we did, like a lot.
So much.
A lot. So that's one thing. Like if you just kind of go back and remember what you're, I mean, we didn't drink water either. That was like,
no, I didn't take a water bottle to school or soccer practice. Like, how are we even alive?
I just don't even remember drinking water, period. Like, did we ever? We drank milk and we drank Sunny D and we drank like all the weird Squeeze-Its and those things, but I don't remember the water.
Capri Sun was our water.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, I mean, here's the thing, like we're doing pretty great. I think we're doing pretty great.
We're crushing it, man. Yeah. I love that. Yes. Just remember that the foods you ate, and we're doing better than we think we are. So this is
yeah. I think there's just a lot of pressure on parents because of like nutritional knowledge, and that like it's just valued so much more than it was then. Like you were kind of a weird granola person if you cared about nutrition, 30 years ago. And now it's kind of intricately tied in with body weight and all of that. But like at the same time too, we are taught to care a lot more about nutrition. I just think sometimes we forget that it is not normal for a lot, most kids don't love every single vegetable on the planet.
Well, neither do I, right? Neither do we.
Well, neither do we.
Yeah.
And so I just think we need to remember, like, if you're serving a variety of fruits and vegetables and other foods as you can, and not worrying about it when you can't. And if you're having positive, like enjoyable experiences around food, even if it's like at a fast food restaurant, and you're sitting there like in the play place and you're sitting down to eat together, like that's a family meal. And if you're consistently doing that and serving your kids water, like you're literally doing so much more than what our parents even knew to do with us. And your kids will learn what feels good on their bodies and how to eat over time as we continue to model it and serve it.
This was so awesome. I learned so much from our conversation. I mean, perspectives, strategies, reminders, just permission to relax even more, maybe. I think we need that. And just it's so lovely to hear. And I feel so encouraged. So I know my listeners will too. We've got one question I love to ask as we wrap up. And that is what's one item in your home that you'd never let go of and why?
I am a photo album, like a digital photo album person. And if I lost those or never had access to those again, I think I would be absolutely devastated. And that's why we're so lucky to have these online cloud storage solutions that, the generation above us didn't have. I literally pick all of my favorite pictures and then I upload them to Shutterfly, and I let Shutterfly do that make my book situation. And they put it all together. I do it once a year. And to me, above anything that I've ever experienced or done, just having a record of my kids and my family growing up together, I think that is more precious than anything we own.
Oh, that made me tear up. That is so sweet. I always love to hear what people say. And The answers always surprise me. And I think that one will resonate with a lot of my listeners, maybe even inspire some digital photo books to be made, right?
And you know what? If you don't make them, like
That's right.
Only take on what you can take on. But for me, I started doing it actually when I got married. And now it's almost more of a guilt thing. Like, oh gosh, every January rolls around, I'm like, I got to do this again. But it really takes like a few hours. It's not that big of a deal. And it is something very special to have. So,
and you can start anytime. You can start with baby steps.
You don't need to go back to the beginning, by the way. You don't need to start when your kids were, born. You just do this year.
Just do this year. I love it.
Yeah.
So many permission slips were received and we're so grateful for, Megan. Thank you so much.
Thank you. It was really nice to talk to you. I'm excited to listen to more of your episodes. I get so much out of them. So thank you for that.
Oh, well, thank you. And for all my listeners too, I know I've been touting the praises of our newest book, but I'll put the link inside the show notes to grab that. And certainly go follow Megan on Instagram. I mean, almost 2 million people do, which that's a lot of people. So kudos. That is huge. And I mean, I'm not surprised with everything you share and all the knowledge and just getting to know you today. You're such a sweet, authentic person. So I'm so happy to see you're seeing success in all these departments. And a New York Times bestselling book is absolutely insane and awesome. Yeah. So you deserve every bit of success. And hopefully we'll get you some more people sent your way, some of my listeners today. And thanks for being here.
Thank you so much. Have a good one.